Today's show is brought to you by Cotswolds Outdoor, Cross Bikes, Garmin, and Cumulus. Hello and welcome to We Need More Heroes. In the age of Donald Trump as president and Kim Kardashian a role model for millions, it's easy to lose hope. But there are still brilliant people out there who can inspire us to live better. Join me, George Beasley, on a mission around the globe to find them. We Need More Heroes aims to inspire and guide ordinary people to live extraordinary lives. Visit weneedmoreheroes.co for show notes and more info. If you enjoy the episode, please leave us a review and rating on iTunes and subscribe if you'd like to hear more. Thanks for listening. So hello and welcome to another episode of We Need More Heroes. We're still here in Guadalajara in Mexico, busting out a few more podcast episodes and finishing off some bike maintenance. So I'm currently sitting in a beautiful colonial library, which is a couple of hundred years old, but it actually has an albeit very basic recording booth. So a big win there. One thing that's a little bit strange, though, is there's security guards walking around in full military get-up, bulletproof jackets, carrying machine guns. So certainly not your normal day at the library. But anyway, if you are looking to follow us on our trip, then just head over to We Need More Heroes, or on Instagram. We're posting lots of stuff about where we are and what we're up to there. So just take a look if you're interested. But now, on to today's guest. He is a multi-award-winning filmmaker, adventurer, and photographer. He spends his time traveling to some of the world's remotest corners under human power in search of wild and diverse adventures and experiences. Most notably, he recently completed a 3-year bike ride around the world, a journey which has been featured by the BBC, GQ, Red Bull, and the Yorkshire Post, among many others. His highly acclaimed films have appeared in more than 30 international film festivals, winning numerous awards, including a special jury mention at Banff, Best Director at Bilbao, Spirit of Adventure at 5 Point, Best Adventure at New York, and they just keep coming. So, without further ado, Ben Page, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you very much. Hearing that back sounds awful.
Yeah, it's terrible when somebody just reads that kind of stuff out, and you never normally know where to go with it. But hey ho, I've
completely forgotten I'd written that. Trying to big myself up to get some work now I'm home.
Yeah, well, it sounds great, you know. So let's just start with how we connected. So another big shout out to Cody, one of the We Need More Heroes team members. He sent me your film, The Frozen Road, and suggested that we have you on the show. And I absolutely loved the film. I think you did an amazing job. So looking forward to hearing more about your adventures and digging into filmmaking. So getting into the weeds.
Good. I'm glad. I'm glad you enjoyed it. It's yeah, certainly quite a story, quite a challenge to kind of tell that whilst still on the road and cycling. And I got the email from Cody a couple of days ago saying would love to touch base and heard about your trip, and it sounds really interesting too, very similar to what I've been experiencing.
Yeah, definitely. So let's start off with some rapid response questions to get things going. So first thing that comes into your head, you ready?
Okay, I'm terrible at these.
They're nice and straightforward. Batman or Spider-Man?
Batman.
Any reasons?
I've never seen Spider-Man.
Whoa, you've never seen Spider-Man?
but I enjoyed the Batman trilogy.
That's definitely the end of this podcast. Sorry, that's it. No Spider-Man, do not pass go. Yeah, the Batmans were pretty amazing. Did you watch the film version, the new one with Christian Bale?
Yes, yeah. In fact, here's a little story. The very first bike tour I did was through the States many years ago. And snuck into an open air theatre, the drive-in cinemas.
Oh yeah.
And pitched my tent up at the back and watched a Batman film for free.
Winning.
Yeah, I think it was like Dark Knight Rises.
Perfect.
Dark Knight, yeah.
Were you the only dude there with a tent, and everyone else was in their like big American trucks?
Everyone was, I assume, was just making out in the back seat, which is the classic staple of American films, isn't it? And then there was me at the back, smelly and dirty, and eating some pasta.
I always wanted to go to one of those. We didn't actually see any in the like months and months that we're in the States. That was
I think they're pretty rare nowadays, actually. So yeah, it was quite fortunate to stumble on it.
Yeah, I guess people have Netflix and huge widescreen TVs for really cheap now. So, yeah, I guess maybe that's died. But I'm gutted. I really wanted to go to one of those. That sounds great. So, what did you want to be growing up?
I wanted to be, well, various things. Gonna go for, I wanted to be a runner, I wanted to be a drummer, I wanted to be a cyclist.
All at the same time?
All at the same time, just like multitasking.
That's very specific. So I guess you did some cycling, drumming. Did that ever pan out?
Yeah, well, drumming was a focus for about 10 years, and then cycling became a focus after that. Raced for a while, and then taking up drinking at university. That then took the focus, and then it was riding the bike around the world. So that's kind of been the focus of the last 15 years from start to finish.
It's amazing that drinking at university, how much that just empties the bank account, destroys productivity, and that fitness that you used to have when you're like 17, 18, just playing lots of sports and then just whoosh into the
I
floor.
know, absolutely. You just lose that determination and drive as well, don't you?
Yeah, yeah. But it's good fun for a few years anyway, so definitely a good thing
Yeah,
to
get
do.
it out of the system.
Exactly, yeah. And if you could have any superpower, Ben, what would it be?
Oh, flight. Love to be able to fly.
Yeah, it's a pretty good one. No, nobody's choosing Spider-Man these days. Everyone's going for Batman, and everyone wants
Yeah,
Superman. We're gonna have to get some
yeah.
more Spider-Man representations on here.
Are you a big Spider-Man fan?
Yeah, I mean, I love Batman too, but I watched a lot of Spider-Man cartoons growing up, and then I guess he's the sort of more nerdy one, and I always felt a bit more sorry for him, like he needs a bit more of support, whereas Batman's just badass, going it alone.
Yeah.
But
It
I love
doesn't
both
strike
of
me
them.
that Batman's a very nice person, but he's the only one I knew, so I had to associate to one of them.
Awesome. And so we talked a little bit about your trip, your bicycle tour, but what were you doing before your tour?
So I was actually at university, studying a geography degree and finished that in 2014, and then it was a few months after that I began my bike ride. But kind of for the previous 4 or 5 years, I'd known I'd wanted to, when I finished uni, to go off on a big long bike ride. So I'd kind of been saving up as much of my part-time jobs as possible, and as much of my student loan as possible. So kind of knew all the way through uni and all the way just before that, I had to make some changes to make sure I could go off on this long ride when I finished.
Do you remember what inspired you to want to do that? I mean, you're fairly young to be wanting to do that kind of tour. Did you have any influences, or you just seen a few people who've done it and thought that looks amazing?
Well, so I used to race road bikes a bit, and kind of tried to pursue that full time for a while. Realized I didn't really enjoy riding bikes to race, but saw them then as a tool to be able to like travel. It seemed like a very accessible, cheap way to travel. I loved being like the wilder places, camping and exploring off the beaten track. And bikes seemed like they would be the best way to do that. So I came up with the idea of going on a trip around the world, then Googled it, having thought, oh, I bet no one's done that before. Realised, every mother and his dog's done it. But obviously not dissuaded by that. So then started reading books like by Alistair Humphreys and saw Mark Beaumont's documentaries, and they kind of only really fueled the fire further.
It's pretty amazing when you look online, you think you've got this really unique, different idea, and you're thinking nobody's going to have done that. And then you look online, yeah, there's a few people doing it, and you're like, wow, this is insane. There's people doing like unicycles around the world, and a guy who's coming on the podcast rode across I guess rode across the channel in a bathtub, and you're just like,
Oh, wow.
it's pretty amazing what people have done, and so many people want to get into these adventures. But I had a really nice chat with this guy, Will, who's called Super Cycling Man, is his alter ego, and he's cycling around the world. And he was talking about how when you first get into these adventures, you sort of think that you have to have some unique angle and you have to do a first or that kind of thing. And then you sort of go and you just realize that it's fine if you do a trip that lots of people have already done. It's just about enjoying it, and there's no medals at the end. So I really like that way of thinking about it. And I think a lot of people put pressure on beforehand. They feel like they have to find this unique angle. And Alistair Humphreys talks about it as well, just doing
Yeah.
adventure for the sake of adventure and just enjoying it. And you don't have to be this incredible novelty who's thought of this unique angle. So I really like that. I guess it's like maturing through adventure.
Yeah, well, I certainly agree with that. I think there's just a lot of gimmicks in adventure, and it comes down to, if you're if it's the first time you've done it, that's worthwhile. It doesn't need to be the first time anyone's ever done it, but if it's the first time you've ever done it, then that's surely as important as it was when the very first person did it.
Yeah, definitely. And so your trip around the world, you cycled for 3 years, but what did it actually involve? Can you just dilate a little bit on your trip?
Yeah, so I began at the southern tip of South America, so your finish line, down in Ushuaia, and then started riding north from there, and rode up through South America, up to Panama, and then took a boat from Panama, which was supposed to go up to Mexico, but after a very long, protracted, multi-month situation, ended up back in Colombia, unexpected, and then flew from there to Denver in Colorado, and then from there rode up to Canada, and then up to the very northern point in Canada, up to a place called Tuktoyaktuk on the Arctic Sea. And then from there rode from Beijing across to Istanbul, and then from Cape Town to Cairo, and then from Athens back home to Yorkshire.
What happened with your boat trip saga? What kind of boat were you on?
Just like a little small sailboat. I'd never sailed before, so I was quite excited to kind of change up. I got a bit bored of cycling after about 7 months, 8 months, and was ready to kind of change up the experience by doing something a bit new. So I thought, well, why don't I try and hitch a ride on a boat going up to Mexico? Now, it was hurricane season, so no boats were really going. So it took about a month to find someone who was actually willing to sail north. I found this South African family who were heading that way, and naively went on with them, and ended up leaving the boat. The boat was in a lot of disrepair, and set off, and then got smashed by this big storm. Loads of stuff broke. It was all kind of an absolute nightmare, and we ended up just like plodding our way into Colombia, into a Cartagena there, which is like this small coastal city. So after 2 months, I was now back in South America. The two South African dudes turn around and say, we're leaving the boat here, we're leaving. So I'm kind of stranded in Cartagena. Decide, do I kind of get back on the bike, start pedaling north through Central America, or do I jump on a flight and go to the States? Because I had to try and get to Canada, because I had a work visa starting in a couple of months. So I took the latter option. So cheated. And it still haunts me to this day.
Well, I guess like just what we talked about before, it's the adventure for you, and who gives a shit what anybody else thinks about it.
Well, exactly.
If you want to mix it up, we had a similar sort of experience. We were coming down, got to La Paz at the bottom of Baja California, and there's just lots of water. It's a peninsula, and we wanted to come over to Mexico. And then we met some people who were hitching a ride on a sailboat going south. And some people who we met were saying, yeah, we're hitching a ride for a couple of months going through Central America, and then we're jumping off wherever, go through Panama Canal and then go into Colombia. And we sort of thought, yeah, that sounds really cool. And we left in May, so it's been nearly a year that we've been cycling. And it's great. It's really fun. But we also wanted to get as many different types of novel experiences and interesting things, and to learn about different ways of travel as possible. So we were thinking about jumping on a boat, and we were trying to find a lift just like you, and trying to hitch a ride. Took a little while because, again, the weather wasn't great. And we were meeting other cycle tourists, and they were just saying, where are you going to go? And we said, yeah, we'll probably head down to Colombia if we can. No, you're cycle touring. You can't do that. And just you can't do that line. I was just thinking like, wow, this is amazing. The mind frame that these people are in. That I
Yeah.
guess the real purists, and it's like you don't win anything if you cite. Loads of people have already done this journey, like thousands, and it's whatever you want to do. It's like really
Well,
personal.
are we going to kind of cycle, or are we going to experience a sense of freedom? And rigidly sticking to a road isn't very freeing. So
Mm-hmm.
you need to allow the journey just to kind of mold and take its own forms. That's certainly something I learned after I took the flight to justify it.
So yeah, a little bit more on that point. I guess it matters what the purpose of your trip is. Some people love riding the bicycle. Like we met some people like Lael Wilcox. She's
Hmm.
an amazing lady who she held the record for the Baja Divide, which is this 1,700-mile off-road, really rigorous, grueling route through Baja, California, and very remote in the middle of the desert. And she did the whole thing, 1,700 miles, in 11 days and held the record for a long time. And she loves the actual cycling. Like, that's her thing. And we weren't cyclists before this trip. We sort of think of it as more traveling by a bicycle as opposed to like just doing a bicycle trip.
Hmm.
And I can completely see both sides. But for us, it was more about, like I say, seeing new places, meeting people, seeing different sides of life, and getting as much novelty in as we can. But for you, what was the purpose of your trip? Did you think about that before you went, or whilst you were there, and did it change?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was quite a keen cyclist beforehand. Um, so I do enjoy the cycling aspect of it, certainly. But I was never out to set any records. I thought I'm only going to go around the world once, so I'm not going to do it too fast.
Lazy.
Um, yeah, well, exactly. That. Just you just retrospectively justify things. It's great. um, no, I mean, part of it was wanting a really big adventure. Another part of it was that I thought it would be a really formative experience. I've done a few bike tours in the past and done a few solo adventures in the past, and always found those to be just incredibly instructive and formative for myself. And I thought, well, if you can extend a 2 month trip out, and you feel like you've developed so much over this period of time, then what will it be like after 3 years or something? So that was another real push factor for going off. Um, and just curiosity. I mean, we're all very curious, aren't we, about what's out there and what's in the world, and we can see pictures or watch videos and kind of live vicariously, but it's not really the full picture. So I wanted to go and see things for myself.
Yeah. And what was like looking back, what was the most rewarding part of your journey or aspect of your trip?
Um, well, certainly, I mean, arriving home, not to kind of run through the entire trip, but it was incredibly rewarding to kind of have that finish line and to know that you've got your tire tracks passing over five continents. So that was a fantastically rewarding thing. And actually, before I left, um, just that idea of returning home was such an intoxicating emotion, even though I hadn't even experienced it then. Just the idea of it was quite a thrill, really. So certainly that was a wonderfully rewarding moment. And I guess rewarding moments come in tiny little pieces as well. When you're just up there in the mountains on your own and you've gone up some nice track, or like you've been pushing your bike all day to get to the top of the pass, and you reach that top of the pass and you pull out a half-eaten Snickers bar and you set your tent up and you watch the sunset, and there's not a soul around, but there's just they're the memories I remember the most. So perhaps they're the most rewarding experiences as well.
Yeah, it's amazing. You get such an incredible, yeah, reward, I guess is a good way to describe it, from just those little things. Some of my favorite memories looking back are just getting to the top of what you thought was a monstrous pass, and then just sitting there and in the quiet with nobody around for miles and miles, especially in North America, and you realize how remote and wild those places are, going through the
Hmm.
Yukon or even parts of Montana and up in Alaska, and you get to the top and you're just like, wow, we're completely alone, and you can't hear any noises apart from the natural calls of birds or a bit of wind. It's there. Those little moments really become the big moments. I really love and relish those.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So, did you have a favorite place on your cycle? You obviously saw a lot of places, and there's, I'm sure, different things that you liked about different places. But looking back, where are you think I'm so fond of there?
Um, Certainly Mongolia was up there as one of the best places I've been. I was riding with some friends at that point, so there were four of us, which changes the whole dynamics of a ride. Since most of it was on my own, to then have some friends for a little while was just so much fun. So I remember Mongolia and the mountains of Mongolia and looking down into the valleys and just seeing like a few smatterings of yurts in the distance, these like little white dots. And when you're cycling, you're often just thinking about where you're going to be camping. And certainly one of the reasons why I enjoy bike touring is because I really enjoy camping. And Mongolia is just like one big campsite because it's just open steppe and grassland, and you can go anywhere, and it's just absolutely fantastic. So Mongolia was certainly a place I'd love to return to.
Oh yeah, I'd love to go. The culture looks fascinating. I'm
Yeah.
an addict to learning more about Genghis Khan and
Yes. Yeah.
all the kind of history there. I've heard that it's pretty Genghis Khan heavy over there, like everything, or Chinggis Khan, as
Genghis
you're supposed
Khan.
to
Yeah.
say. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
is it? I've heard that everything sort of revolves around him there as like their glory days.
Yeah. Yeah. No, there's a lot of references to Genghis Khan whilst I was over there, and I don't know. It's just such a strong culture there. Really, really interesting. It's a nomadic culture, so hospitality is at the centre of it. In fact, it's rude to knock on people's doors because it's like you're questioning the hospitality. You just walk into people's yurts, and then they'll give you some curd, some like cheese curds and gone off milk. But it's it's lovely.
Amazing. Yeah, definitely have to get ourselves there one day. And you talked a little bit then about having friends and how that changed the dynamic. But your film, The Frozen Road, is all about your experience traveling in the remote wilderness all alone. And you did a really good job of showing the challenges of traveling without company. But what was your experience like traveling alone?
Um, well, I suppose it's kind of what I try to show in the film is that it's just this extraordinary duality where you have just fantastic moments where you wouldn't want to be doing anything else and you're on your own, but it just feels so meaningful and so enriching. But then there are other times usually when things are going wrong or things are a little bit difficult, where you're just like, well, why have I brought this on myself? Why am I doing this alone? You want to share the weight of a decision or just share some conversation with someone. I couldn't find, well, none of my friends wanted to join me for 3 years of a trip. So a few friends joined for like a month here or a couple of months there. But I found that as a really nice compromise because there were periods of time where I wanted to be on my own. I think it's really important if you get the opportunity to spend a good chunk of time on your own just to kind of test yourself, just to learn about yourself. And although it's not always as fun, it's certainly you develop a lot as a person. It's a very fulfilling way to travel. But then on the flip side, when you're with friends, it's just a lot of fun, and you can actually reminisce in a pub afterwards about it.
Yeah, I think you just get different things out of the trip. Like you say, it's a lot more fun traveling with other people. But then on a big trip like this, especially yours for 3 years, it's nice to have something else from it as well, like a bit of personal development, I guess you would call it, even though I hate that phrase.
Yeah,
Like
I haven't
really,
found the right phrase for that yet.
yeah, no, self-improvement sounds just the same. It makes me think of those like terrible American motivational speeches. But you know what I mean, where you're sort of just like testing yourself and growing in a way that you probably wouldn't when you can rely on someone else. So I can certainly see the benefits of mixing it up and having company sometimes, and then pushing through those testing times solo as well. But so
hmm
looking back now, would you do it? What would you do differently over your 3 year trip?
Um, I'm not sure I would do that much differently. I kind of think that whatever decisions were made at the right, like they were the right decisions for the time. I mean, I had the last year and a bit totally on my own, so maybe I'd have some mates come and join, but no one was free. So, so I mean, yeah, what do? You just got to continue, haven't you? Yeah, I mean, I haven't, in all honesty, I haven't looked back on the trip with that much sort of regret or anything like that. So maybe I'd go a bit slower. I'd spend even longer. Because sometimes I felt like I was racing to get to the next place, or, you know, like I'd try and chase mountain ranges for being in the right season, or particularly actually coming through Northern Africa. I was quite excited to kind of get to Europe and get back home and kind of, you know, racing to the finish line sort of thing. And maybe I missed a bit then, but it's certainly the right decision at the time.
Yeah, 3 years is really fast to go all the way around the world. It's going to take us, I think, 2 years to get from Alaska down to Argentina. So you nailed it. You did a great job to get around that quick.
Well, I mean, so I kind of knew that I didn't want to be away for more than roughly 3 years. That's all. I'd saved up £9,000 beforehand, and I thought that's going to last for 3 years. So, I mean, I didn't want to be away. I couldn't afford to be away for much longer, and it kind of made sense. Maybe 6-7 months per continent, 5 continents, and yeah, kind of a bit of leeway time in between.
Yeah, yeah. So it really seemed like you got a lot from doing those challenging, hard times by yourself. But do you remember your biggest moment of despair?
It's in the frozen road, I think. I won't give the full story away because all the listeners should go and have a watch of that. But I'll just say I got trapped on a snowy river, frozen river up above the Arctic Circle, and it was just -30 and a bit below that, and ended up having to push off this river for quite a few days with some wolves and not very much food and a lot of fear in my mind. So that was definitely a moment of despair, certainly.
Great little teaser trailer for the film there. People are gonna it's so good. You guys have got to watch it. And other than on your frozen road experience, did you have any other close calls, like 3 years cycling around the world in a lot of these remote or I guess you'd say undeveloped places? Any other close calls that you remember?
There were close calls with kind of not having enough food or water for certain stretches. Nothing too serious, just don't eat for a day, or like don't really drink very much for 36 hours, but always enough that it wasn't life threatening, or it didn't develop to be kind of too dangerous. Got hit by a truck in Ethiopia. That was an unfortunate scenario, but I came off absolutely unscathed, although my wheel was completely destroyed.
Wow, Iron Man over there, Jesus.
Well, no, so it was just the tamest of crashes. I was going up this hill, and this lorry veers into me at about 5 miles an hour, and I jump off the bike as he hits me, and unfortunately, his rear wheels go over my front wheel. But I roll off and jump up, and everything's fine.
Wow.
But it could have been my leg, but it wasn't. So I got up with a smile on my face.
Do you have a next big adventure planned, or what are you actually working on now?
Yeah, well, so throughout the ride, one of the things that became of greater focus as I was going along was teaching myself how to make films and how to take photographs. As I said earlier, I was a geography student before I set off, but kind of thought it'd be really nice to, as you know, there's a lot of time to think and to learn new skills whilst you're riding a bike. And I thought, well, why not I teach myself how to make films and take photographs. So for the 3 years, I filmed the entire journey. So I'm hoping later this year to be able to put away quite a few months to be able to edit that into a feature length film of the entire world ride. But since having come home, I've kind of been trying to pursue this filmmaking and adventure filmmaking career, if that's the right word, as heavily as possible. So the next big trip, I'm going to Alaska in 2.5 weeks for a 3-week rafting and ski mountaineering trip through the Alaskan coastal range, which is really quite scary because I'm not very good at skiing or rafting. But there's going to be a team of 10 of us, and I'm part of a small film crew to be who are working on that. So that's exciting.
Very cool. How did you come across that opportunity?
Well, I got to know a guy called Joey Schussler, who makes a lot of mountain biking films and is like quite a renowned filmmaker over in the States. And actually, I had my film, The Frozen Road, premiering at a festival over in Colorado whilst I was riding up through Africa. So they very kindly flew me out to the festival and met this guy and got chatting. We got on really well. He invited me out to film a project in Nepal in December, which I did, and then became friends. And he said, "Oh, I've got this another trip coming up in Alaska. Do you want to join me on that and help film that?" So I kind of said yes blindly, not knowing what I was getting myself into, but it should be good.
Amazing. Wow. So had you got any experience in filmmaking before or photography before you started the trip?
No, not at all. So I'd barely touched a camera. So the Frozen Road was 15 months into me having used a camera, but I'd been using it almost every day, documenting my ride as I was going along. And the film I actually edited, the Frozen Road, whilst I was in South Africa. So I'd ridden up to Tuktuk, finished off in Canada, then spent 6 months going across Asia, reached South Africa, spent another month and a half riding up through from Cape Town to Pretoria. And my sister was living and working in Pretoria at that time. And this was the first time since Canada I'd had free accommodation. So I slept on a floor for a month, and I was carrying a small little laptop with me, and threw together that edit. It took about a month to do it. A lot of hours gone into it, kind of a lot of YouTubing, trying to learn how to edit properly, and then put that out to some film festivals whilst I was still on the road.
Wow. Well, yeah, you did an amazing job, and it's really inspiring to hear that you taught yourself how to film that well and edit so well just without any experience in just some time. So that's really awesome because
Oh,
the
thank
girl
you.
who recommended that I watch the film, afterwards I had a chat with her and I said, "Wow, this is amazing." And she said, "Yeah, well, he's a professional filmmaker." And I said, "Oh, yeah, that sort of makes sense." So I imagined that you were some kind of film school extraordinaire, top of the class dude. But
No, this was just no. I did physical geography. I used to just look at pictures of mountains.
And so, what did you find were some good resources, or what was your actual process? So you obviously had a lot of time to practice, but other than that, how did you go about teaching yourself? And yeah, were there any particular channels or series that you found particularly good for learning?
Um, Nothing quite so specific. I mean, just typing in. I mean, there's a bunch of online resources for how to use cameras, how to edit, how to basically make films, because it's kind of, camera technology has been distilled into such small things now and such affordable cameras, I guess. That it's this democratization of the art form. So there's loads of information online. You don't need to go to film school anymore if you just have an internet connection and you've got Google. So basically, I would kind of come up with an idea or come up with what might be a problem and Google it and just kind of go through whatever the top results are. There's one website called Premium Beat, which do a lot of different blogs about different filming techniques, and there's another one called No Film School, which do a few little articles and stuff, and then a lot of YouTube tutorials for using editing software. So you just like type in like, oh, I want to, whatever problem it is, type that into YouTube, and then hopefully something will come up, and you've got to sit through a 30-minute tutorial, but hopefully you'll get the answer at the end of it.
Yeah, well, it definitely seems worth it because the end product was amazing. So yeah, really encouraging. But for the people who are listening who are traveling or really into filmmaking and want the super specifics, what were you filming with, and what program were you using to edit?
So I had a Panasonic GH4, which I got secondhand, and then with that I had a Metabones adapter, which meant that I could use a Sigma lens, a Sigma 17 to 50 millimeter lens, and a Canon 70 to 200 f4 lens. So 2 really good lenses, and then later on in the trip I got a wide lens, 10 to 20 Sigma, and yeah, they just sat in my frame bag as I was riding along, and rattled around a lot. Kind of tried to pad them out and protect them as much as possible, but they survived a lot of abuse. And editing, I had an old MacBook, 2011 MacBook with Premiere Pro on there, and that's kind of a fairly standard editing software.
This is terrible. I've got no excuses now. I've got a 2011 Mac with Premiere ready to go, and your film's looking a little better than mine. We'll put it. We'll leave it there.
Well, I mean, so something I did kind of pick up was, just adding a few little illustrations or a few animations in there kind of really helps polish a film off. So kind of, you obviously want to get a really good story. That's the most important part. You want to get some beautiful visuals, but if you really want to make it look like a polished product, spend a bit of time trying to get a few little like movements or animations in there.
Yeah, I love that bit, and exactly like you say, it makes it feel very professional, really different from the amateur film that travelers will make. How do you do that? How do you get animations made?
Well, I just used PowerPoint. there's always a hack. There's always an easy work, or maybe not easy, but there's always a workaround to problems. I mean, most people would use After Effects and kind of like figure out lots of different paths for things, doing all sorts of different stuff. But firstly, I didn't have After Effects, and secondly, I had no clue how to use it. So I just kind of imported photos into PowerPoint and removed backgrounds and did a few other twiddles with it, and then managed to kind of get little video sequences together and put them into Premiere Pro.
I love that. That's awesome. It's so great when you find a workaround like that. But is After Effects Adobe?
Yes. So that's part of like the Adobe's editing software package. But I don't know if you've used Premiere Pro, but Premiere Pro seems quite intuitive.
Yeah.
Like you drop videos onto a timeline, and then you put some music, and you can put some transitions and stuff. After Effects just is so confusing, so it just doesn't come easily.
And so for people that are listening that are thinking, what are all these programs? You can buy a subscription license to Adobe. It's called the Creative Cloud, and they have lots of different programs on there, and you can sort of pick the few that you like, and you just get a license for that and pay a monthly fee, I think. So Premiere Pro is the main one that you'll want to use for all of the editing stuff, and then there's After Effects, and there's a few things that you can use for color grading and all that kind of stuff. But if you're looking to just get started into editing and making movies, then Premiere Pro is probably the one that you want to look for.
Yeah. Now the Premiere Pro I had it was before CC, so it's CS5 or CS6. So it's from like 2011, 2012. And I think they're kicking around the internet that you can just get a download of them. Because Premiere Pro, like CC, well worth investing in, but it's very expensive. But the older versions managed to get for no cost.
Top tip, there you go. Just download the old one, and if you can make the Frozen Road on that, then that's probably good enough for most people just doing adventure travel films.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you had that camera set up, but what would you recommend for people? Say they are on a long cycle trip or any kind of adventure. They really want to make a film that looks great and beautiful and professional. What setup would you recommend for them that's maybe not crazily expensive?
Okay. Well, I would recommend maybe. Well, the camera I used was a GH4, which there's now been 2 iterations since then. So that came out in 2014 or 2013. So there's many like second and third hand cameras available for probably a few £100. It depends what your budget is. Camera's important. Shooting in HD. I mean, most cameras shoot 4K now, but all my stuff for the ride was done in just 1080p. And get two lenses. So get your workhorse lens is probably a 17 or 18 to 50 mil, so it's fairly mid-range, and you'll keep that on the camera most of the time. And then you want a zoom lens as well. So I had a 70 to 200 mil, but that allows you really to pick out points in the landscapes, and you can isolate mountains pretty nicely. So you'd have to get super, super close to them, but you can still zoom in. And if you're wanting to do nice time lapses or something like that, or night time lapses, A big wide lens is really, really useful as well. But again, it all down to whatever your budget is. But I've never bought anything new. It's always been secondhand or, multiple hands. And camera gear tends to be well looked after, unless you're obviously riding a bike, in which case it does get a lot of abuse. But most people take very good care of their camera stuff. So when they sell it on secondhand, it's a big discount, but it's still in good nick.
Yeah, definitely. I've met a couple of adventure photographers, and they've actually all echoed that advice and said buy secondhand, get it checked, but you can save a lot of money unless you're rolling in cash. But most people who are doing this kind of stuff aren't. So yeah, definitely a top tip. Take a look for some secondhand stuff, and there are loads of shops if you just give it a Google and check that it's been looked over by somebody who actually knows about that kind of stuff first, and then yeah, you can make a good saving. So for people they're thinking now, yeah, okay, I'm going to buy the kit. This is awesome. I'm going to watch some YouTube stuff. But a quick way to try and improve at anything is to sort of ask somebody who's fairly accomplished in something, what are the mistakes that amateurs tend to make so that you can avoid those? So I normally use this when like learning a new skill, and it helps you avoid falling into the pitfalls of most beginners. For example, like learning to surf, the first thing they tell you is like, don't look down. Most people look down at the front of their board, and that always makes you nosedive. So what do you think are the main mistakes that amateur filmmakers tend to make?
Well, there's a few, and I definitely made them when I was first learning. I didn't focus enough on getting audio. So audio is such an important part of a film, and to get good, clean audio, if you're talking to the camera or someone else is talking to the camera, you want to make sure you're getting some good audio, because an audience will put up with bad visuals, but they'll rarely put up with bad audio. So make sure you've got like a semi-decent mic, and you know how to use it to get the right settings on that. Usually you can just Google that. Take some time to get good shots. Don't just, if you're cycling, there's a lot of times that you're putting your tripod up and you're cycling off and you're cycling back, and it's quite a long process. So certainly be aware that if you're going to film, it's going to take a lot more time, and it's worth getting one beautiful shot, one shot where you kind of, you've invested a 5-minute walk to get the camera in the right position, than getting 5 pretty crap ones. So really kind of just don't rush into just getting as many shots as possible. Really think about what you're going to be taking. Think about composition a lot, because we all want to see beautiful shots on the screen. But probably the most important part is to identify what a story is, or what the story is. If it's just going to be your account of, your backpacking trip or something like that, it's probably not worth telling. You've got to kind of try and reach something beyond what you're experiencing. So the Frozen Road is trying to be this sort of like little idea about what it means to be, lonely and solitude, and this sort of dichotomy in those emotions. But it's certainly not like an account of, it was cold, I cycled here, it was cold, I cycled here. So try and kind of find that human story within it, because that's what people really connect with. Again, Frozen Road, most people haven't cycled in those sorts of temperatures or that place, but they can connect with the human emotion of it. So really kind of nail down a theme that you really think is important and worthwhile exploring, and then you'll be so much more motivated to put all that time and effort into making it right.
Yeah, that seemed to be a major strength. Like you did have beautiful shots and good audio, but also it was so nice to see someone who really got that the story is important, especially with this kind of stuff. You often see it in extreme sports films or travel films, that there's no real story because people just think, well, this looks cool, so I'll just put lots of shots together of beautiful things, but it's pretty unengaging after a while, whereas you really nailed down a strong story. And it's difficult to do, to try and define how to do that. You just sort of, I guess, came up with the idea. But any advice on people who are thinking like, I've got all this footage, or I'm planning on getting this footage, how do I come up with what the story is or should be?
Well, you just got to really start editing. The story often comes in the edit. I mean, if you're making a film, you usually have some concept of what you're going to be shooting when you're going out there. So for the Frozen Road, I knew, well, actually, the film that I thought I was going to end up trying to tell was not the film at all. It was going to kind of be this, like, go and chase your dreams, go and do like this ode to the millennial to kind of leave accountancy jobs and go and chase dreams around the world. But it certainly wasn't that in the end, because there's a much more important story that I wanted to explore. But it's, you got to edit, you got to just feel your way through it, really. I know that's not really very useful to say, but you just got to kind of feel what's important or feel what is emotionally valuable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so work with the footage a little bit and then see what comes out. I know it's a very tricky question to answer because there's no sort of, you can't really say how do you be creative or that kind of thing.
It's just off feel.
Yeah. And you mentioned before that getting good audio is really important. Again, I've heard that advised by so many people, but not in terms of settings, but what for you, how do you get good audio, and what again would you say is like maybe a budget and a mid-range mic for people who are just thinking like, I want to get into this right now?
Well, so there's a twofold argument with audio. You want to sometimes get bad audio if you're trying to get across a certain scenario. So in the Frozen Road, there's a lot of horrid wind noise, but that's trying to get across, just how horrid and windy it was. So it doesn't always need to be crisp and clear, because sometimes you need that rough and ready stuff to kind of put people in that moment, in that place. Now, for my entire trip, I used a little Rode Video Mic Pro, which is a fairly standard shotgun mic, which I'd seen recommended by loads of other people, read a lot of blogs saying that that's the mic to go for. It costs, I think, about £70 on eBay or something like that, £60. But it's going to be so much better than the microphone that's inbuilt into your camera. And that's something that just sits on the top. You can plug it in. But a really useful thing that I took with me was a 10-foot long extension cable. So I could put the tripod up in a distance and bring the mic and put it through the snow, or kind of like hide the cable and put it somewhere else. And then I could kind of talk to the camera, but be a distance away. So it's not just handheld, or kind of get sound of like the bike cycling past whilst it's close, but the camera's in the distance.
Amazing. Love that tip.
That's probably what I'd recommend, yeah.
Yeah. And was the only camera that you had that Panasonic?
Yeah. I was carrying a really old GoPro as well, but I think only one shot ever got used of that in the film. I'd recommend against GoPros. I mean, most people carry them. Most of the time the footage is awful. Because it's my philosophy, or my idea for the filming is the only reason why you can't get a beautiful shot is because you can't be bothered to. So unless there was a scenario where I just couldn't get the camera out, or I couldn't get that right angle, that's when I'd use a GoPro. But for everything else, I'd take the time to kind of set up the shot. So when I'm pushing down the river, I put a tripod on the back of my bike and get the camera on top of that, strap it on with a bunch of bungees and start pushing and get a shot of kind of the back of my head pushing down the river. But there was a few times when I wanted to get like the GoPro out in a storm, or just for like immediate, to get the immediate reaction of something. GoPro is useful, but if you've got the time, and most people, if they're doing long trips, do have the time, it's just a case of you've got to put the effort in to get the nice shots.
Yeah.
And the audience will notice.
Yeah, you certainly do. Your shots are beautiful and really amazing, and it sets it apart. It gives it a completely different feel than watching a normal handheld, shaky GoPro footage stuff. And
oh, thank you. Yeah. I mean, again, when I was, in fact, the entire ride, I wanted it to look like someone else had filmed it. I thought that was a mark of quality. If it looked like someone else had filmed it, because there was a handful of like big investment shots where I'd spent 10 minutes walking up a hill to put the camera up to go back and cycle across. It's like the opening shot is this big wide shot of a frozen lake, and I'm kind of in the distance. And it took a long time to get that shot, and it wasted a lot of battery, but it kind of sets it. It's important to try and show scale and that sort of thing, which just doing handheld stuff doesn't.
Yeah, it's an amazing establishing shot. And I thought, he's got a friend with him when I saw that one, because you were miles away. And then afterwards I was like, oh my God, I think he's doing this by himself. And I was just like, wow, that is commitment right there. But yeah, you definitely notice it.
Did you notice that there weren't any footprints in the snow as well? That was the hardest thing, because for the rest of the ride, I was never really in snow. So you can just walk in front of the camera, pick the bike up and start cycling. But when there's snow, there's nothing that's worse than having a bunch of footprints in the shot. So if you're kind of setting the tripod up, you've got to do a big arc around and make sure you don't walk into what you're about to film.
That's commitment right there. Top
Yeah.
tip. So how did you manage to film so much but still stay present in the experience? Because I really love just capturing some stills and also some footage as well. But I feel sometimes like my mind can just be overrun with that. And I'm sort of like thinking more about should I be shooting this or how to get a good shot than actually present in the experience. How did you find that?
That's a brilliant point. I mean, it does remove you from it. It really shapes what the experience is, because you do start to look at things through a lens. You do start to think of it as like, okay, this will be a nice shot. Are you looking at a landscape, or are you looking at like a curve in a road or a track or something? You think, oh, that'll be a nice shot, and it's not, it's bad because of that, I guess. But what I tended to do was for a lot of like the B-roll shots, or just cycling shots, I'd get a bunch all at once and then just put the camera away. And as soon as the camera's away, I can just kind of try and switch my mind off and be present a little bit more. But certainly if you're trying to self-document, so you're documenting your own story, you're having all these thoughts, and then you suddenly think, oh, what I've just been thinking about, maybe I should talk to the camera about that. And it's a little bit contrived because of that. Often you're kind of retroactively talking about what you've just been thinking about. Yeah, I haven't really squared that. I mean, it certainly adds a different perspective to any form of travel, and it's something I've found really rewarding in the way it kind of makes me kind of take stock of places a little bit more, makes me think a bit more about where I am, because I'm kind of thinking about, oh, like this is a nice shot, like, oh, this is a good experience to maybe capture. But certainly it does draw you away from the experience sometimes, because you kind of having to look at it from a distance.
Yeah, that's an interesting point that you just came back with, though. It's sort of, again, a bit of a duality. Like, it can take you out of the experience, but also sometimes I feel like it really draws me into the experience, because I'm concentrating on what are the colors around, what are the people doing, and I'm really looking with my eyes instead of just sort of going along. And it's easy to be distracted with whatever it is, a to-do list, remembering to buy those new tires or whatever. It really can bring you into the experience because you're looking out for what's actually happening now and how can I make it into a good shot. So I think it's about
Yeah,
managing it well to make sure it doesn't overtake the trip, but also it can have a kind of positive effect as well.
yeah, and of course, you know, if you so again, I keep on drawing back to the Frozen Road as an example. That was a month-long part of the ride, which was distilled into a 24-minute film. Now, obviously, there's so much of that ride which wasn't in the film, because there's so much of that ride that I didn't film. So there'd be days where I was just like, I'm not filming. I'm just going to kind of experience this. So, as I say, you put the camera away and you can just leave it for a few days, and whatever happens, happens. You know, just let it. Just, you know, you need to do that for your soul, just to kind of, you know, experience it the way it sometimes should be experienced, and particularly for a much longer ride. So like my big world ride, and you know, you're only going to tell the same story once. So you're not going to kind of, like, if you getting caught in a big snowstorm or, you know, a big storm somewhere else, you only need to capture it once, and all the subsequent times, unless it's going to be bigger and better and more epic, you don't need to capture it. So kind of like knowing kind of what you've already filmed and stuff is useful.
Yeah. And just one more specific question on this. So you must have got a lot of footage on your ride around the world. And so how were you storing all of this stuff?
So I was carrying a bunch of SD cards and a bunch of hard drives. So I'd be filming and probably spend, you know, 3 weeks or something without electricity. So I'd be putting stuff onto these SD cards and storing those. Then when I got to a town or a village or something, and I could plug in my laptop, I'd then spend quite a few hours kind of getting that footage from the SD cards onto two hard drives, like a main hard drive and a backup hard drive. And that would usually, 1 terabyte would usually last, you know, just short of a continent or something like that. Within that time, I'd get to somewhere where I could post it off, or a friend would have joined and I could give it to them to take back home. So I wasn't carrying, you know, all that footage around for the entire time. and nor could you obviously store it on a cloud or something like that. So it's just a case of sending it back home, and my mum was hiding it in different places in the house.
In case absolute disaster happens, the house
Yeah,
burns
yeah,
down the day before you come home, and
yeah, or a burglar comes in or something like that.
oh my God, yeah, the thoughts of the hours spent on that.
Yeah.
One thing that I think is tricky is when you get all these shots and then you want to try and start to organize them. Have you got any good advice on that? Because you just got a bazillion different shots and you want to try and distill this story down. So, any advice there?
Certainly some advice after I finish, because my whole logging system and just system of kind of storing stuff was pretty awful whilst I was riding. And since coming back home and working on some more professional filmmaking jobs, I kind of learned a workflow much, much better. So obviously, I mean, first thing, you've always got to back things up 2 or 3 times, so make sure everything's backed up and in different places, just in case a hard drive breaks, or you drop your pannier in a river. So just make sure everything's backed up, and back things up by date. And then when you're going to actually edit a film, it's a very laborious task to begin with, because the best practice, at least what I've found, is to take every single clip that you've got and throw it onto the timeline. So throw it onto the timeline in Premiere Pro or Final Cut or whatever editing software you're doing, and you watch every single shot, and you make a little note of what each shot contains. And any shot that you really like, you drag up one like layer on the timeline, and any shot that you really, really like, you drag up another layer, and then they become your selects. And you take all those chosen ones and put them into another sequence, and then you start going through the second time, and you can start to comb through all this footage to see what's good, and it gives you this chance to see what you've got, because usually as much as you've shot all the footage and you'll remember it, there's little moments in each clip which you'll have forgotten about, but which could serve a really useful purpose in the film. So it's there's no two ways other than you've got to watch it all.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like a laborious process, but that seems like a good way to do it, just to try and sift through a little bit and sort it, because it's an overwhelming process, I think, for a lot of people. The filming it is I think, one thing, but editing it is a whole nother beast when you get to somewhere and you just think, wow, I've confronted with just gigabytes and hours of footage. But yeah, that seems like a good way to sift through. So what for you distinguishes a great travel movie from an average one?
Well, one of my favourite films that I watched before I left, and I still watch it today, just as every now and again, is Road from Caracol. I don't know if you've seen it. It's with an American climber called Carl Dempster, and he's cycling through the Tian Shan mountains of Kyrgyzstan and doing a bunch of climbing along the way. And I mean, it's filmed really like handheld GoPro sort of style, like not much investment into kind of nice, beautiful shots, but just the human story of it is just absolutely fantastic. It made me really want to go off and ride around the world after I watched it. It was just kind of so motivating and so inspiring. And yeah, that's the style of film I think I like the most. Something where you got to show your vulnerability. Films that are kind of like self-branding or like trying to kind of self-promotion, I don't think are of any worth. It's got to be open, be honest, and try and allow an audience to connect with what your experience is.
Yeah.
So any sort of film, yeah. But Road from Caracol is definitely up there with one of the best films.
Is it called Road from Caracol?
Yeah, it's either Road from or Road to Caracol. Caracol's like this little town in Kyrgyzstan.
I haven't seen it, but I'll definitely take a look. Awesome. And so, yeah, we've talked a lot about film and movies, but just you also do some awesome photography and stills, and you have some beautiful portraits on your site. How do you portraits something that I think are some of the most interesting things to capture when you're traveling, but how do you go about that and establish a relationship with people that you often might not be able to talk to? And what's your whole thinking around portraits?
So it took me close to 2 years to be able to really be filming other people with any level of comfort. I found this notion of filming or photographing other people really invasive. And I don't know if it's like some sort of like Britishness and like being a bit awkward, but I just, when you're on your own and you suddenly get a camera out in a situation, I just feel it's really bad. I just always felt really awkward or rude. And oftentimes people would be really welcoming and would actually quite enjoy having their photo taken. But for a long time, I kind of really was worried about doing that. But anyone who's been on any sort of trip or traveling, they know, or you know that you meet so many interesting characters and you get chatting away. And they'll kind of say, what do you do? And if you just say, oh, I'm a photographer or something like that, even if you're not, but you just say, I like to take some nice photos, show them some photos that you've taken already. And then after you've kind of had a bit of a conversation, or they've ridden your bike or something like that, just at the end say, oh, would you mind if I took your photograph? And then you can show them the photograph, and hopefully get an email address. You can send it off. In fact, there's a guy going around Argentina and Chile at the moment who is going around with a Polaroid camera, and he's taking photographs of families and giving those Polaroids to the families, which I think is a lovely way, because often I've found that if I've taken photographs, they're probably never going to see it. And again, that feels quite a rude thing to do. So it wasn't until quite a few years into the ride that I kind of realised that actually, if I want to be a photographer, the interesting shots are usually portraits and to see people's faces. And yeah, sometimes you just need to just ask and smile and be friendly. If people say no, respect that, and never kind of be too subtle in taking a photo.
I really like the idea of sending it to them after, or at least offering to send it to them after and showing it to them, because it sort of makes the relationship a little bit less you're just taking something from them and you're more sharing it with them. So that's a really nice idea.
Yeah. Well, it's really important. And I mean, I'll be honest, like it was rare that I'd get an email address from someone that was legible, and then that a month later I'd then still have that piece of paper that it was written on and be able to send it to them. But you gotta try and do that, because you're taking someone else's photograph, and yeah, it's just a bit of respect, isn't it? I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And when you're actually taking the photo for a portrait, what are you thinking about? What are your top tips for portraits? Just like a couple bullet points, like boom, boom, boom.
I mean, you want to try and make the subject as natural as possible. But obviously, if you've just asked them to take a photograph, most people get fairly rigid. And most people, they either smile or they don't smile, or they try and look very formal. I just said before, don't try and take stealthy photographs. But again, sometimes you can just get your camera on your knees or something and just take a couple of snaps.
I love that, the old incognito, and you're just like talking to them like they're never going to know. We've got a 10-second timer release right here.
Yeah. But I don't know, just like, the first few photos are never very good, so just like take a few photos and then say, oh yeah, like, do you mind if I just get a couple more, and kind of like relax into it and try and make them laugh or something.
Okay, well, seeing as you brought up landscapes, let's just have one last point on getting content and photos. What do you look for in a good landscape photo? I find it very hard to make something look interesting. Normally it looks very flat. Especially like big, wide open expanses that you look at with your eye and you think, this is incredible. And then I take a photo, I'm like, this is terrible.
Yeah, scale's often really important. So if you're riding with someone else, or you're with someone else, or there's something in there that you can put some scale with, that's really good. So a lot of the photos that I've got are of me cycling, because that was the only subject. But it was quite important just to have a human in the distance on a bike. To provide some sort of scale. And for some reason, whenever I look at photographs, if there's somebody in it, even if they're just like a little speck in the distance, that kind of shapes what the image is. And then light. I mean, light's the most important thing. Wake up at sunrise, take photos at sunset, get some nice light, some nice clouds, and edit. Editing photos does a lot.
Yeah, it definitely does. As much as I want to get away from it, because you want to try and spend as little time on the computer as possible, sometimes you just need to do that, especially if the only time that you can get a photo is in midday or in like high noon, or when the sun just is draining all of the colors out of stuff. You sort of just have to.
Yeah. I mean, you can get nice photos, but you can also get photos that are there just for you to remember the place by.
Hmm.
And I mean, if you want to get a really nice photo that you might be able to, put on a website or sell to a magazine or something like that, you're probably going to have to spend a bit of time getting the right light conditions and finding the right sort of foreground and the right subject. But obviously, most times you're just going to get something that you're going to try and remember that place by.
Hmm. Yeah. So that's amazing. That's so good to do like a almost little crash course. But am I right in thinking that you do talks and sort of workshops and this kind of stuff that if people are interested, they can come and learn from you from the horse's mouth?
Yeah, well, I've done a few talks since coming back home about the trip, and did a little workshop at a festival about filmmaking. It's not something I'm really pursuing too heavily. I always feel a bit awkward kind of presenting in front of folks, but if anyone wants to get in touch, they can certainly email me, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And I've got doing a talk in a couple of months for the Kendall festival tour. But nothing too concrete on the horizon. Too many films and adventures still to come.
Yeah, amazing. Very cool. So, yeah, thank you so much for your time today. It's been awesome, Ben. But just a couple of closing questions that I ask everybody. So, the show's called We Need More Heroes. And do you think that heroes are born or made? Is it nature or nurture?
I think they are made. Maybe they're made through their upbringing, but I don't think anyone's born with any inherent greatness in them, or certain amounts of stubbornness. I think it's all everything can be shifted and shaped.
Interesting. Awesome. Encouraging to hear. And who are some of your heroes or inspirations?
Um, I've been asked this question once before, and I didn't have anybody. And I wasn't sure I was going to ever get asked this again.
The lone wolf just going out there carving his own path.
Well, I mean, yeah, obviously we need more heroes, but I'm not sure there's a few filmmakers I really look up to. Someone like Renan Ozturk makes some beautiful films.
Is he the guy from from Meru, the climber?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, you had Conrad Anker on a couple of episodes ago, didn't you?
Yeah, that was amazing.
So yeah, so like Renan was doing that with Conrad and with Jimmy Chin, and yeah, make some beautiful films. And I don't know. I think we need more heroes, but don't idolize people, because at the root of it, we're all kind of experiencing the same human condition, and just people are in different paths, but still experiencing the same thing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Part of this show is to have guests on from all different types of backgrounds. The first season is what can we learn from adventure? So we've had lots of adventurers on so far, but it's nice to have some people who are really far along this sort of journey through their career or success, and then have some people who are more at the start as well, because it can feel a little bit untouchable sometimes when you see these people who you idolize. But part of the show is to try and make them seem more human, because when we look at someone like a Conrad Anker and you see him as the lead climber of the North Face team and leading Jimmy up there and the team, and you just think, how is that guy human? So it's great to
Yeah,
sort of have a bit of an audience with them and an insight into them, and realize they still have fears, and they're just like you and I, but they've just spent a long time perfecting a craft, and that we can do it as well.
someone like Conrad, his fears and fulfillment and happiness is still just as relevant as General Joe on the street. So like obviously he's achieved very different things, but yeah, it certainly kind of don't, as you were saying, looking at someone who's kind of been so successful, it kind of dehumanizes them. But there is that human aspect there.
Yeah,
If that
yeah,
makes any sense.
definitely. Especially when you meet somebody who's very humble, like a Conrad, and you, it just makes it feel a lot more doable and inspiring that we're not a world away and not a different species. It's just a lot of purposeful practice and finding out what you're good at. And also around the name, We Need More Heroes. I like the name, and I think it's more interesting than We Need More Role Models or something like that. And
Yeah,
the
yeah,
whole idea of a hero, it means different things to different people. And for me, it's not just somebody who goes and does these incredible climbs. It can be the dinner lady who's very kind to people and makes the school kids laugh, or just a nurse, or anybody
Yeah,
who's choosing to make the world a little bit better. And it can be doing big adventures, or it can be just be making a tiny little difference to a few people. But the name was really about helping people become the hero in their own story. And not choosing the path of fear, or if they had an idea or a dream or anything they wanted to do, but they weren't doing through some kind of, fearful reason, then it was getting these people on who I don't necessarily think of as heroes, but people who can help us grow and become more and achieve everything that we want to in life, and redefine what happiness and success means. And just it's more around the listeners becoming the person that they want to and could be, as opposed to
absolutely.
just getting on these big idols. And there's a lot of confusion around that. I think a lot of people who I ask to come on the show, they say, I'm not a hero, and that's sort of not where the name came from. So I really wanted to draw that out.
No, that's good. That's a really, really nice, important point. Because, I mean, it's all about everyone's got the capacity to do and be what they want to be within themselves. And it's just kind of having those opportunities to realize that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Ben, thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you. Thank you.
It's been great. It's been really, really cool. I've loved hearing about your adventures and filmmaking, and I'm sure people are going to find this really useful and be ready to get out on their bicycles or on adventures and start filming. So where can people find a bit more out about you online, and where can they see your films in the Frozen Road?
The Frozen Road, it's on Vimeo, or it's available through my website, benpagefilms.com, or you can just Google it and it should pop up somewhere. I've got a website, Ben Page Films, which I post very, very rarely on, but there's some photos up there, and there's my email address if anyone wants to get in touch. And I guess I post photographs every now and again on Instagram under Ben Page Films as well. But there should be some more documentaries and more films coming out over the next few months through those channels.
Amazing. Looking forward to it. So watch this space. So Ben, thank you again so much for coming on the podcast, and thank you everybody for listening.
Thanks, George.
Cheers, mate. See you. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
There we have it. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, spread the love and share it with anyone you think would also benefit from it by sharing it on Facebook or Twitter with the hashtag #WeNeedMoreHeroes. Connect with me on Facebook and Instagram @WeNeedMoreHeroes, and just _heroes on Twitter. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, and in fact any of our other episodes, so get in touch at weneedmoreheroes.co. Thanks so much for tuning in and sharing the love. And thank you again to today's sponsors, Cotswolds Outdoor, Cross Bikes, Garmin and Cumulus, for making this show happen. You've heard the magic, now do something with it and be the hero in your own story.